Good afternoon, everyone. We are back, and today we are talking about everyone's favorite topic, food. I don't know about you, but it's like pulling teeth for me to get a written review for chiropractic. When I look at a restaurant, there's thousands and thousands, and people tend to have this emotional, neurological response to their food. And today, our guest, Kelley Crandall, is going to talk about that. Welcome, Kelley.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Chef
Excellent.
Kelley.
So, when we spoke, you recently had moved back to the Asheville area. Where were you coming from?
I spent about 8 months in Valdez, Alaska. So that was really fun. Did a little bit of a break from cooking, took some time off, relaxed, immersed myself in nature. It was great. Highly recommend it. It's on Prince William
Yeah.
Sound. Ate a lot of moose meat, a lot of salmon. It was a good time.
And what made you want to come back to the Asheville area?
Well, I have grown children here, and I just became a grandmother, actually, to my first grandson. So,
Wow, congratulations. That's awesome.
you. Thank you. Yeah, he's pretty special. After raising 4 girls, it was good to get a boy.
Wow, you had 4 girls?
4 daughters, yes.
You're not winning many arguments there.
They're all wonderful, wonderful young women. So
Awesome. Congratulations. That's something to be said for that. And when we met, we were kind of talking about your creation of the Umami Mami. What has your journey through food been like? When did that start for you?
So I have started, I've loved to cook since I can remember. I mean, I really got a lot of inspiration from my grandmother, Mary, who just had me in the kitchen with her, whether she was frying chicken or I started really young. And I think one of the things that really helped further my enjoyment of it was that my parents really didn't ever um, keep us on like kid meals. We always ate what they were eating. And my father was a law professor, and my mom would cater a lot of the faculty parties that they would have. And so I grew up just eating, pretty elevated food. Both of my parents were gourmands and really appreciated cuisine from all over the world. So as a child, our palates develop until about age 3, and they were really mindful about introducing me to all kinds of different flavors. So I didn't really grow up a picky kid at all, and I was enjoying, foods of all types. Even as young as a child. So I started my career at hospitality at 15. I started in the dish pit. And then as I got a little bit older, I was able to start waiting tables. And I spent about 15 years working front of house in all capacities, from manager to bartender, you name it. And then in about 2010, I realized as a single parent that I was going to have to do something that I really enjoyed, and, to get the bills paid. And I decided to move from the front of the house to the back of the house. And that's when I went to culinary school in Santa Rosa, California, which was, just one of the best places in the country to learn about food and wine. It's kind of where the whole food, farm to table food movement started, with, Thomas Keller from French Laundry and Alice Waters. It was a great, great place. Tons of amazing fresh produce, of course, with the California Delta being right there. So yeah, I started my catering career. I started my own catering company in California in 2015, where I was primarily a retreat caterer. So living at the base of Mount Shasta, I started really diving into the energetics of food, because people were making pilgrimage to this, what's considered one of the 7 sacred mountains of the world, for healing and for, to transform their lives in some capacity. So I started becoming a lot more mindful about what I was feeding people. And that's when I started really going into nutrition, I would think, as well. So, I kind of made a name for myself because I never had a set menu. I would do everything very custom, like catered to people's dietary specifications, preferences, aversions, sensitivities, allergies. And that kind of set me apart at the time. And it was through feeding people while they were doing this transformational work that I became very mindful of the energy that I was bringing forward as, as a professional preparing their food. It needed to sit really light on the digestive tract, needs to sit really light on the energetic body. And from there, I started studying flavor and the way that that has an effect on our neurological function, and how it can be a really nice add-on to trying to get the body into homeostasis. And so I really treat, our flavor palette like an artist's palette, painting with flavor, and having the elements, of the sweet and the salty and the bitter, astringent. And then umami, which is where my business name comes from, is a term that was um, came up with by a Japanese scientist, basically to denote the presence of glutamates in food, which is an amino and is isolate protein, and it happens to also be a neurotransmitter. So you can, through a well-balanced palate, my work has been in the culinary world and in my career to um, help activate the parts of the brain that sometimes can get really depleted through trauma, through stress, through just, organic factors like, food and air and the water. And so we can really hack into the mainframe of our brain through flavor. And so that's been the sort of the basic tenet of my cooking, is how to activate those feel-good chemicals in the brain through flavor.
And that, folks, right there is why restaurants get more reviews than healthcare workers. A lot to unpack there, Kelley. I want to go back. It seems like your family had a big influence with food with you.
100%. Yeah. My dad had a severe case of wanderlust. So I had been to 8 different countries in all 50 states by the time I left home. And we ate very well, and they really knew what they were doing with food. My mom and my dad both loved to cook. And so, uh, like I said, just introducing me as a child to a lot of different flavors, spicy and, different cuisines, Asian to, Indian curries and sushi and all of that stuff, really had an effect, I think, on my love of food. I definitely have the bug for it.
Well, your parents did right. I'm like them. I align with them well. I feed my kids whole foods. Everything that I'm eating is what they're eating, and it's good for your jaw development, and also your palate and how things are supposed to move. But maybe we could help a lot of parents out there. I know I saw it with my nieces and nephews. Their parents would just feed them macaroni and cheese and chicken nuggets because they said they didn't want to eat anything. How could we help some parents out there with this? Because this is a big issue, I think. Not only for the parents at the dinner table, but also in the long-term health choices that people are making. And then they kind of gravitate into what I call tasteless food or food science. You can eat a McDonald's hamburger without even having to chew on the thing. So what do you got?
So I think the biggest thing is getting kids involved in cooking and getting them excited about that. And I find that kids are more likely to eat fresh vegetables if they can pick it themselves in some way and they can see it growing. If you can't take your kids to see where vegetables are growing, you can't grow them yourself, and get them introduced to what a perfectly warm tomato warmed by the sun tastes like straight off the vine, then another way to do that is through the farmer's market. And just kind of seeing everything so alive and so fresh can get kids excited, having them pick out what looks good to them and then figuring out a way to incorporate that into what's being cooked. There's a lot of different ways to hide vegetables in food. If your kid is just, super picky and doesn't want to try new things, you can make muffins with zucchini and things like that. You can sneak a lot into spaghetti sauce. The red sauce blends things really well. But I think getting kids excited, like they get to cook their own vegetable that they picked out at the farmer's market, and so they have some type of control and autonomy over their choices. I think,
Gotta have some skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
That's what
Don't
I
give
do.
them too many choices,
When
two
I'm
or
with my kids,
three.
we go food shopping every week, and the first place we go is the vegetables and the fruits, and we start picking out what we're going to do, and we take it as far as them coming home and prepping their snacks and
Yeah.
things like that. So I think you're spot on with what you got saying there, to expose them to things. Like, it's our job as a parent to expose them to the world. Like, your parents traveled with you, but also exposed you to the foods, and now look where you're at.
Right. And so you can say, okay, you have to have a vegetable tonight, and it can be either cucumbers or broccoli. Which would you prefer? But having sort of that non-negotiable, saying there needs to be a vegetable on a plate. Would you like it sauteed in garlic, or do you want to steam it and dip it in, soy sauce or whatever? So
Yeah,
the giving,
I'm very surprised. Sometimes my kids just want to eat them raw, like carrots or peas. Like,
right.
they'll start eating as I'm prepping. I see little hands reaching in there, and they're just like, "No, we want this raw tonight." I'm like, "Okay, that's how it's
Yeah.
gonna be."
Yep.
It seems also like 2010 was a pivotal turning point in your life. What was the catalyst for that?
Um, I wanted to get out of the front of the house, really. I mean, I just wanted to be cooking professionally. And at the time, I was fortunate enough to go to Santa Rosa Junior College, which has the best culinary program for a secondary institution in the country. So they had just built a multi-million dollar culinary facility. Everything was brand spanking new. And I had wonderful professors that really inspired me. And one was a gourmet magazine food writer, recipe writer. The other one was the chef at a very classic French restaurant in Santa Rosa. So I had a very good education for very little money when, Culinary Institute of America was down the road in Napa County, and you'd pay $50,000 a year to go there. So I was getting the same type of education in the same region, with all of the vineyards and the acres and acres and acres of fresh produce constantly and almost year round. So it was definitely a deciding force to go to that particular school.
Yeah, growing up, I always remember my grandfather had a garden, and always something was going on, and we'd bring it to the table, and it was definitely a part of education to take care of nature and to take care of yourself. You mentioned earlier about the farm to table movement, and for people that don't live in Asheville, like, one of the reasons that I live here is because there's such a huge influence of farm to table and all different aspects of foods. But where I grew up in northern New Jersey, that really didn't exist. So maybe you can elaborate that a little bit of what it was like growing up into that movement, and why it's
Yeah.
important, and what you've seen it evolve to today for people, to help them understand what's going on there.
Well, California feeds like a third of the world's population, with produce. The Sacramento River starts in Mount Shasta, where the headwaters are, and goes through the middle of the state, the Delta, where Sacramento is, and it expands into this amazing watershed. And so you have just a ton of water there, along with the sun. It's just perfect growing conditions. So that you know having access to fresh produce year round was a big factor. But I think the farm to table movement really started because people started taking these perfectly grown bits of produce, and then really utilizing that as the showcase, and trying to not only on the plate and in the preparation of the food, but really, growing the food to have like the most carrot tasting carrot that you've ever tasted. And that starts with soil, and the proper soil, because chemicals don't grow food, soil does, right? So really good soil science, having it being such an amazing growing region, and provider for so much of the world. There's more attention to detail, I think, in crop rotation, and in building soil there than maybe in some other areas. Like, so, lot of revolutionary sort of new practices in agriculture as we're getting, people, they were just kind of um, quicker on the draw to try and counteract the effects of industrial agriculture and what we experienced during the Dust Bowl and the, the Depression, and how that just completely raped our soil of all nutrients, and the advent of these chemicals then to try and rectify the damage that had been done. So I think that California was a little bit ahead of the curve in that way. And yeah, great growing season, perfect conditions, and it grows amazing produce. And so that produce would just then get transferred to the restaurant. I know, for instance, because I mentioned Thomas Keller before, but he didn't keep a freezer in his restaurant at all. I mean, everything was almost by the day, seasonal availability, specialty growth items by farmers, more of a relationship with the farmers. Um, and the chef had a little bit, I think that was, in the late 80s was when the chef could actually go to the farm and say, this is what I'm looking for, in my restaurant. Can we work together to grow this specific product in this specific way? And I think that's was a great place for those relationships to be formed, because really the eating experience starts with the soil, then with the farmer and the relationships with the farmer, all the way through. You're talking about the energetics of food, the energy that goes into growing it, the energy that goes into preparing it, the energy that then, if you're serving it, can all be transferred. And, some of us that are more sensitive than others, like myself, I can really feel, if that attention is not put into it, I can sense it in my energetic body and my mood. And that's sort of what inspired my cooking. Because and I know you and I had talked about that a little bit at Liberty Cafe when we met, but I can feel when somebody's had a bad day or is sad, by the way that I feel after I consume a meal at a restaurant. And so I thought, okay, well, if I'm picking up on that, what would the experience be for my guests or my clients if I was infusing it with a really high vibration? And so I found that actually does transfer, and people really do notice a difference.
Yeah, I think a couple things there I picked up on is that people might not understand the difference of the type of farm you're talking about and then the factory farms down in the valley that have to pipe the water in from a long ways away, and the water is not as healthy as the water. For people that don't understand, like water that comes from a mountaintop is how nature intended it. It's not polluted, it's properly
Right.
mineralized, it tumbles down these rocks, it gets structured, oxygenated, and then it's going right into these farms in that aqueduct area that you're talking about, compared to what we find on this food store shelves now. Like, things may claim to be organic, they can still spray them, but also it's the water that they get sprayed with that they're fed is also very toxic and kills them as well.
Yes. Yeah, so there was a movement, I think, during that time for more small family farms to get away from, the large, um, there's more regulations on what can be sprayed in California. There's a lot of wide open spaces, and there was a big activist movement from smaller family farms to get the bigger guys to tone it down. And so there were laws put into place during that time of what could be sprayed and when and all of those things. So
I found that interesting as we transition here. When we kind of met, you were trying to talk about the flavor of the food and the neurology, and um, there are nerves in your tongues, different aspects of your tongues senses different things, and you were trying to relate that to brain health and the experience. Why don't you open this juicy box up for people of what you're trying to create now in that lens?
yeah, it's a huge passion of mine. I'm a big advocate for trauma healing and trauma advocacy, transparency, and in different ways that things can work in symbiosis to help people with their mental health. And whether we realize it or not, I think we're kind of constantly being onslaught with different traumas, whether it's, the political climate or, the state of our food right now. And so I really do feel that flavor can be a way to kind of get the brain in line with the rest of the body for making more nutrients more bioavailable. So when you've got, if you're, got a really taxed out day, you're stressed out, you're in fight or flight, you're got cortisol rushing through your body, your body's going to have a harder time digesting and assimilating the nutrients that you're putting into it. So if we're going for nutrient dense whole foods, which I always do in my practice, then we also have to look at flavor and the way that our bodies are receiving those nutrients. And so I found that through flavor and through umami especially, which picks, it's sort of a unifier on the tongue. It connects all of your taste centers, which are on the side of your tongue. It sort of encompasses the whole tongue, brings everything together. And then you have, it's not only just a flavor, but it's actually, or a taste, it's actually a feeling, because there is the science behind it that shows that it's a neurotransmitter. So having that sort of activation on the tongue, I feel can, activate parts of your brain and get those, the dopamine and the things that we're depleted of every day, whether it's from a stressful job or we just become a new parent. That can, we can activate those feel good chemicals in our brain, and have, a really kind of slowing down of the whole process of eating. And it helps our bodies to digest better and to assimilate the nutrients that we're trying to put into it.
So what you're saying, if someone's having a stressful day with no appetite, instead of going to the two-finger scotch, they should use their palate through certain foods to help reset the day.
That's how I rein them in. Yes, with flavor. Yes. And healthy eating does not need to taste bland, and we're going to, there's a funny thing that happens when we start eating better. If we're not a big salad eater, let's say, we start eating salads, it can feel like a chore because we're just not used to having a salad instead of our go-to comfort food, right? Well, through proper use of flavor on the palate, on the tongue, your body will just naturally start to crave those nutrients that you're putting into it, and you'll want those salads more. But we first have to hack into having that taste good so that you're actually wanting that. And there's an interesting thing that commercialized processed food and food science involves, and they call it the bliss point. So the bliss point is where fat and salty and sweet come together, because that's the magical alchemical combination that wants you more of something. Has you wanting more of something. So they'll do that in, like, for instance, a box of Cheez-Its comes to mind, because that's definitely a guilty pleasure of mine. I knew you were going to have an opinion about that. But it's a perfect example of bliss point, so what we have to do with the whole foods is we need to figure out a way to get to the bliss point with that combination of healthy fat, something sweet. It does not need to be sugar. It could be pineapple juice, in a marinade or something like that. Salty, of course. We need salt. There's a big, movement, less salt, less salt. It's important, really matters what type of salt we're eating, because if we're doing like a Celtic sea salt or a pink salt, we're getting trace minerals that our body desperately needs. And we can't actually, salt can dehydrate you, but it also can keep you hydrated, because it will help electrolytes be better delivered to your body. So what we need to do is have these, get to that bliss point with whole foods, so that our bodies naturally start wanting more of what's good for us, and and can move away from the processed stuff. So with my clients, who are primarily really busy professionals that are super stoked about cooking, what I'm trying to do for them is create a bliss point for them, so that they aren't so apt to just grab something on the go, or, maybe they'll have a meeting at the house because there's food prepared for them that tastes good, that's healthy. My stepmom told me at one time, she said, I was traveling too much. I was on the road, just young and carefree. And she said, honey, sooner or later, you're going to miss the taste of the iron in your own pans. That really stuck with me. I cook primarily with cast iron, so it's a thing. You do get iron from your pans, and home cooking is, I mean, you can't replace it. It's really, really important for us to take the time out of our busy day and our busy schedule to eat a home cooked meal, because there's a feeling involved with it. It's grounding. Um, it's something that we can do for ourselves to just take some time and be more mindful. So
Yeah, I think mindful cooking is so important. Automation has not helped us at all. We had a post the other day that got a lot of feedback about eating breakfast before you exercise. And, long story short, you can do that, but you're going to, even though you appear healthy, you're going to shorten your telomere length. And our neurology and the way it works with our endocrine glands has optimal timing for things.
yes,
And, the optimal time for exercise is actually between 1 and 4 p.m. And what they find is if we match that with our protein synthesis, it's like if you exercise within 30 minutes of your biggest protein meal, which would be a little later in the day anyway, you'll get 300% more protein synthesis and fat metabolysis. So your body composition changes automatically just through the way you're eating and the timing, without any kind of thing like a calorie restriction or calories in, which is total bogus. Because while you're talking here, I recommend to a lot of my clients a paleo type of diet in conjunction with more red light and cold thermogenesis, which is the way nature intended it for us, and then timing all these things so we could actually heal through the food you're eating and master that bliss point. Because I think people they read little lists of what to eat and what not to eat, and they eat it segmentally, and it's very boring and bland, and they don't understand that you can create, because fats are healthy. You need fats. I think when I was a kid, being an athlete growing up, somebody started this low-fat diet fad, and a lot of it had to do with the drug companies wanting to sell more statins because and lower cholesterol, but a low-fat diet actually increases your cholesterol, and then it throws off your aldosterone level, which is your salt level, which, not only do you get fat, but you get swollen at the same time, and you see all these people with huge swollen extremities, and that's what's going on with them, where if we could master that bliss point of the certain amount of fats with the proteins and sprinkle in your carbs around it, like you can have pineapple juice with something. I don't recommend drinking 16 ounces of pineapple juice ever, but you can put that onto a high protein, high fat meal to flavor it up and still get the vitamins and minerals that are in that, right?
Yeah.
That you need in that concentration, and then it'll digest nice and level, and you don't get those spikes of what's going on. So I really think that
too, like for say as a woman, it matters too with intermittent fasting, because I know you're kind of touching on that maybe. It matters what time in our cycle too that we should be intermittent fasting, and how long those windows are. And as I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, so it's an autoimmune low thyroid function, and so what works for me specifically with autoimmune disease is if I get a pretty big protein hit within an hour of waking up, that is huge fuel for most of my day. So I do like an avocado toast with a soft boiled egg on a sprouted bread, organic sprouted bread, like Ezekiel bread is my go-to. And that really will, you have to treat food as fuel and what works for metabolic function. Now, if I eat in the middle of the day, my body tends to want to just shut completely down to digest my food, because I have a slower metabolism. So, because of my sluggish thyroid. So it really depends on the person. I think, I don't think it necessarily it's a one size all fits approach. It does matter sort of where you are biologically. If you have autoimmune disease, are there any pre-existing conditions or extenuating factors that would warrant, some type of amalgamation of timing of eating? But certainly with the thermogenics and stuff like that is really important. But I try to take like a whole person approach too, and really go into some of these factors.
Well,
with people.
there's never one thing, right? We're dynamic beings, but I'm pretty sold on the fact that bliss point and the biology have to come together, and if they don't, if you were to be on your moon cycle and then start eating a high carb breakfast, all hell's going to break loose all day long, right?
Yeah.
It's going to create more cravings for stuff you don't need, and it's going to make you feel worse, right? Even though you might crave that carb, you're more satiated with the protein meal. And I always have to laugh, because I grew up in a different generation, but I never heard or thought to put an avocado on toast until I moved to Asheville. Now I'm slightly addicted to it, but it makes sense. It's like nature's pizza. It's better than pizza, basically. It's a better food combination of everything. You still have those textures like a pizza, but it's not, it's not a cooked nightshade, which is terrible for you anyway. But
highly inflammatory to the system.
so we could learn a lot from and thank you for being vulnerable here, Kelley, about the Hashimoto's, because that's what we'll see a lot with people that have autoimmunity. Is just your body's having overreaction to something, and we need to figure out why, not just deal with the overreaction, but what is actually going on in there. And so much of it is diet and lifestyle things that we can control ourselves, and we just haven't been conditioned that way. And there's a lot of bad advice that goes on out there for people, and then they try to manage things with drugs, and then the drug isn't working when they have to keep changing the dose.
Exactly. And I think that really we need to, all of us are so different. I mean, especially with thyroid, I can speak on that personally. Thyroid is the computer system for the entire body, all of the metabolic function it controls. So it's almost like a constant maintenance plan for me. Sometimes, it's you have to kind of look at your own chemistry, and that includes brain chemistry too, is what is going to be the whole person approach to diet. And if we do a one size all, I too do mostly paleo, and about 80% plant-based for my clients, because a lot of my clients that I'm working with have inflammation issues. I mean, we all kind of have this state of chronic inflammation. So, it's really about taking the processed foods out of things, and, looking at really diving into medical history as much as they're willing to disclose about what they know about where their genetics are, with what their ancestral heritage is. I'm a big person on eating for your ancestral lineage, not for your blood type, but for your bloodline. If we're really looking at coming into a better picture of health, I would like to know, what were your ancestors eating? Plays a big part in how I prepare food for my clients. Because I think that, we do have specific DNA that was coded and, evolved over time, by what, where our roots were. So as an Irish person myself, I should be eating a lot of cold water fish, seaweed, bivalves, grass-fed lamb, primarily, not a lot of grain, and hardy grains that are greens rather, that can grow in colder conditions, so, and that's what works for me. And I feel best when I eat those types of foods. So.
Yeah, and even you can take it a step further. We should actually be living in similar latitude and longitudes. Just because if you're from Africa and you want to go live in Detroit, doesn't mean you should, because your body's used to a certain amount of red light radiation from the sun and certain food combinations to interact with that as well. It's great to travel, but I don't think it's good to displace yourself too far from those bloodline lineages where they are on the globe for you as well. Like, I'll tell you right off the bat that the closer I get to the equator, I would get sick, because I'm not, I'm Irish and I'm like a Fitzgerald 3 score, but I just can't tolerate that kind of heat. And nor do I want to go live in Canada. So, Asheville for me is perfect. It's a little warmer than Ireland, but you can still maintain that type of diet. And like, I'm pretty much the healthiest I've ever been in my life at 47 compared to other times. And these are some of the things that I've changed, because like, being an athlete growing up, I would eat 5,000 calories a day training, and then you're taking out the fats because someone said eat egg whites and all this other crap, and it gets so convoluted, and you're actually getting sicker as you're getting stronger, but you're getting sicker at the same time. And I like that. I don't think that there is a chef on the planet that has ever asked someone their health history. So listen up, people. Kelley cares about you, because she's going to care about your health history, and she's going to talk in collaborative care with your healthcare practitioners of how to get you back into balance, and teach you those skills to do these things, along with the paleo background and your blood type. So there's never like the magic bullet, but if we can take in all these factors, we can make better decisions for you so that you can be healthy for a longer period of time and life longevity, not just managing short-term problems, but have a long decision arc of health. And that's why we asked her on the show today. So she's just knocking it out of the park today with bliss points and bloodline eating and all the other stuff. I think you are actually at a client's house today. Is that what's going on?
So I am a private chef. I do meal prep for clients. Like you said, I really dive into the whole person approach. And so when I take on a new client for meal prep work, as I'm doing today, I'll do what I call a discovery meeting, and we'll talk for an hour. That's part of the service, free of charge. We really dive into some of these things. I go into what your favorite foods are. Like, what do you crave when you're having a bad day? What would you, do you have any goals? Do you have any weight goals? Do you have any, really take into a lot of different things into consideration. And and I basically prepare meals for the week. And I do private chef experiences, which is really fun. I offer a service where I do a cooking class while I'm preparing for people. Just did that a couple nights ago for some clients, and really offer sort of a wide range of services. I would definitely call myself a private chef over a caterer, so I don't like to do more than like 30 people.
What a distinction too, right? It's like people think of a caterer like, here's some hot food, see you later,
Right. Yeah. So there's definitely, I'm available to my clients to talk with and to really teach what I'm doing, because at the end of the day, I want to really demystify cooking and get people excited about it. I would love to take on clients and have them use me for a month and then they don't need me anymore because they've learned something by watching what I do. So in culinary school, we're always told that you can teach technique, but you can't teach flavor. And so I'm feeling pretty good that I've come up with a method to teach people flavor. And
you're
we
challenging a dogma that's taught in school, and we are our own healers, we are our own best doctors, right? We know what's going on, and our innate intelligence is pretty smart, and you're finding when you can teach people the flavors, they're making that connection between their brain and their gut, and then maybe they can make some better choices when they're stressed out.
That's correct. Yep.
Well, I got to tell you guys, Kelley, after we met, made me some dipping sauces, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't think they were going to be bad. I knew they were made consciously with love, which is super important. That's why I can't stress enough to people to not eat processed food, especially like fast food restaurants. They're just not made with the same level of care. I call it a hate sandwich. They're just like, and pushing it out the door, like you got to have a place that's conscious and food made with love, and they care about what they do, because there's an energy exchange that goes on through that process. And I think that's where home cooking takes it to that next level. And once you do cook in those cast iron pans, they are a little addicting. You'll never want to eat food from any other kind of pan ever again.
Right.
The way that because they heat up better. The food doesn't get as denatured in that pan. It cooks a little faster, and it just holds the ingredients in. I think it holds the ingredients in of all the foods much better. So back to these dipping sauces. I tasted them. They didn't make me sick. No offense to you, Kelley. That's how I check something, if it makes me sick or not. And then I gave it to a friend. They were having a party. They're like, hey, bring those sauces. And so blindly, I brought all these sauces. And one of the top comments right off the bat, the person's like, I would buy this. Like, if this was in the store, I would buy this.
Okay, that's what I want to hear. Thank you for the feedback. Yeah, that's definitely a goal, because for busy people, it'd be really nice to just go pick up a jar of Umami Mami simmer sauce, throw your protein and your veg in there, and you've got an easy, quick meal.
Yeah. Well, being a single working dad, that's kind of my story. Like, I'll have food pre-prepped, like I got my chicken in the Tupperware ready to go, and I can just throw it in the oven. But then it's like, do I really want to make a saute sauce right now?
Right.
I'll just put some salt on there and call it a day tonight. But if there is a little Umami Mami sauce in there, I would be so inclined, because it's so easy to do. That's the nice part about that stuff.
Well, I do have some good news on that front. I just found a space that people will be able to come and pick out my sauces from the deli case that will be refrigerated. We'll have a different batch every week. It's in Woodfin, so I'll be moving into that kitchen on May 1st. And I will also be able to hold private dinner parties from my space, as well as teach cooking classes and, expand my meal prep clientele list and have prepared food items for sale.
Wow, what a great thing. I want to open up to the people in the comments. If you want to get connected on that, maybe we could link my community into Kelley, and we could do an event there, or get some cooking people sign up for some cooking classes. Because like I could recommend things, but I can't go home and teach you how to do it, and things can fall through the cracks. And I think that would be a nice addition to everything that I talk to people, but bring that tone and texture in to educate them to do that. So thank you for sharing that. How excited are you about that?
I mean, it's just my highest joy and honor. No big whoop. It's really fun when you step on the path that you're meant to do. And
yeah, well, especially when your family valued it. Your grandma Mary, that's like, she would be very proud of you.
Yep, she would. She's with me all the time. I definitely get little hints of her laughter. Like, it almost feels like I saw a meme one time. It said, "I don't measure a thing. I just listen, and my ancestors tell me, okay, honey, that's enough." So sometimes I have those experiences, and
yeah, we don't walk alone on this earth plane for sure. And the gifts come in all shapes and forms. And thank you so much today for sharing this gift of healthy eating and helping people understand the bliss points, which I think is critical, and also eating for their bloodline, which is critical, and that food can not only be fun, but it can be very healing for you and help you make some better choices down the road. Anything else you want to add today, Kelley, for our listeners?
Yeah, that would be great. I just invite everybody to come over to my page. My Facebook business page is at the Umami Mami, and that's spelled UMAMI. And my name is Kelley Crandall. You can always also friend me on my personal page. And my website is up but being constructed, and that is theumamimami.art. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We'll make sure we put that in the show notes. And when you guys see Kelley, you won't miss her. She's electric. She's kind of glowing, high vibing with all this food that she eats. And now that it's lunchtime, if you're like me, I'm starving after talking about all this. So I'm going to go get me.
It's funny because I'm right down the road from you, and I have to actually go and grab some stuff for my client. So I was thinking about just bringing you a little something. Say thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome to drop anything off, and we'll make a post for it to share, because it was so delightful for me to bring those dips to a party, knowing like how they were made and what's behind it, and them not necessarily knowing yet. I just said, hey, I just kind of kept it bland, like I met someone at a networking party. Not knowing like everything that is in there, and then to see the reactions and like who's like saying feedback or sharing it with someone else, like their unsolicited feedback, And I will tell you, they match perfect with the proteins. Like they're so good. Like,
yeah, and the cool thing about my sauce is you can dip veggies in them. You can slather a piece of fish with one of them and throw it in the oven. They're very versatile in that way. You can, add a little bit of cooking oil, a little hot water, and then you got to marinate. I mean, they really do have multi-purpose uses.
Well, I like them too, because it's like you don't have to read the back of the label. It's like when you go to the food store, the label's like so long, and then the ones that have the shorter label, the price is just astronomical, and you're supporting different agricultures, and here you're local and you're conscious about doing this thing. So it's just a great opportunity for people to engage in this, and it makes hard things like making a marinade simple, and then it's covered.
Yeah, and it will be cool to launch my sauce subscription. So that
you want to talk about that yet, or are you not ready?
Well, when I get in the space, I'm going to be offering, and it'll be, different variety pack. You pick 3, pick 4, pick 5, and they'll switch out by the week. And, I'm really passionate about ethnic cuisine from all over the world. I believe soul food is in every culture. And so I try to stay very authentic with my flavors. So if you wanted to have an Asian meal, then you're going to have an Asian sauce, Southeast Asian, whether that be like a Thai peanut sauce or, a lot, marinade for your fish or whatever it is. But you can really take what I create and create a meal out of it. It's easy to pick up, what type of profile that is. And I just really want to help people get excited about cooking again because.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point because, like, I grew up in North Jersey. It's a big melting pot. There's all different types of restaurants. We have a little bit in Asheville, but they're more like always trying to outdo something. So it becomes like this higher scale thing that's so far away from the base. And some of the sauces that we had tried were so delicious, like the jerk sauce. Like, maybe you just elaborate people what goes into that because it was just outstanding.
Was that the Jamaican bitter green sauce?
Yeah, that the bitter green, and then there was a jerk chicken one too, or jerk one.
Yes, yeah.
Then you had the one that almost like, not to talk bad about it because it was fabulous, but it looks like a Thousand Island, but it's not. It's everything a Thousand Island should be, but it's not. It's like
that was my orange. So I made that from so they're all vegan. That one was I made from pumpkin seeds and chipotle and oranges, fresh oranges, orange zest, and a little bit of cumin, a little bit of powdered chipotle, and it was just a really nice sort of. Well, everybody loves the orange sauce at like, Papa's and beer or whatever, so, but the pumpkin seeds when they're soaked and cashews when they're soaked can make an incredible creamy sauce that has no dairy. And I mean, it's just, I like it on everything.
You fooled me that there was no dairy in that because it was so creamy. And I'm telling you, people, if you put that on a burger at a cookout, you are going to be a hero.
Yeah.
To people.
I've always been the condiment queen. I have like 4 different kinds of mayonnaise in my fridge right now. So it's fun for me to create these different types of sauces. And
well, that's what I like about them too. So you don't have to have a whole door of refrigerator full of condiments. You just like little compartmentalized things that serve multiple purposes for veggies and for proteins.
That's correct. Yeah. And everything that I do is made with, sort of painting those flavors on your palate, making sure that there is that balance of your palate that can really sort of, because I really just want people to get high off my food, So who wants to get into a food coma, when they've got a whole afternoon worth of work to do? So I try to keep it just really light. And that is some of the most consistent feedback that I've gotten from people that I've fed, both when I had my food truck and my catering company, is that, people could eat a huge plate of my food and then go dance for 4 hours. They're like, usually food just like slows me down and makes me tired. And so I really create food with that in mind to give you a boost instead of slowing you down.
Yeah. Well, plus it cuts down on people's food bills because like those condiments are probably the most expensive things in the food store itself. And here in Asheville, you can get your potentially raw milk and eggs from some provider and get your local meats at the butcher shop or wherever you choose to get that, and then a little bit of veggies from either your garden or at the food store, and then your sauces. It's like you've got all this high vibe in food, and you get to control the cost of things that are processed. Like you don't even have to have a processed food in your house at all unless you want to, but I mean, it's just so cost effective, and the return on the energy to your body and the output is so high. It makes sense.
That is actually exactly what you just brought up is why I'm excited about these sauces. And that's what I had in mind, because people go to the farmer's market, they want to eat better, and they see all this amazing produce and meat, and then they're like, they get intimidated or they kind of freeze up because they don't know what to do with it. So I'm really trying to simplify that process with
think about a restaurant too. As much as I like to be served, there's a lot of things I'm like, I could cook this at home, but I can't make a little sauce like that, and that's what you're going for, is that flavor. And then here you are bridging that gap to add that restaurant style, high quality sauce to your proteins or your veggies without having to pay for all the extra stuff at no offense to restaurants. I love you guys, but it's just not sustainable 6-7 nights a week.
Right. Yeah. And we do need that extra home cooked meal. If we can't do it for ourselves, I'm definitely available to help teach you how to do it for yourself.
Yeah. I think people, helping them master that bliss point is the game changer, because then it's like, then you'll make better choices. Because if you are craving the food and you're having a stressful day and you go to the stuff you shouldn't be eating, you're still not satiated. The brain's just going to want to keep looking for what it is, and
If it
you're
tastes
missing
good, we're
the
not
point.
gonna. If it doesn't taste good, we don't want to eat it. It's just simple, yeah. So it's got to taste good.
Well, thank you for your time, everybody. This is the Umami Mami, and you got to try it. Put it on your tongue. It'll change your world.
That's right. The alchemy of taste.
Thank you, Kelley. Have a great day.
Yep. God bless you. Bye.